One evening in the spring of 1976, a group of friends were talking of summertime plans, mainly jobs, vacations, and perhaps an adventure. They all liked the idea of adventure, mostly because it didn't sound like work. "Let's skateboard across America," one of the friends said, and with those words, the first skateboard push across America was born. In 1976, skateboarding was in the midst of the urethane rebirth. A few years earlier, a surfer named Frank Nasworthy had stumbled upon the idea of replacing the hard clay wheels on skateboards with soft urethane wheels. Overnight, everything changed. Skateboards could now be ridden on all types of surfaces, even on rough roads that stretched 3,000 miles across America. The group of friends had begun skateboarding in the summer of 1974, and one of them, Jack Smith, was a bit more serious about it than the others. In 1975, he competed in the Bain Cadillac Nationals. Before the event, he had sent a letter to Roller Sports, a manufacturer of skateboard wheels, seeking wheels for the race. He had received a box of 20 wheels. No one believed him when he said they were sent to him for free. A letter requesting sponsorship for the skateboard push across America was sent to Roller Sports. None of the friends thought anything would come of it. 2 weeks later, a letter from the company arrived. The company agreed to supply all the gear they needed and $500 each, if they made it. 2 of the original skaters dropped out. They were replaced by Jeff French and Mike Filben. A northerly route was chosen, guessing it would offer cooler weather. It didn't. They hoped they would find less traffic. They did. Jeff's 1969 Pontiac Firebird was chosen as a support vehicle, so they devised a leapfrog relay system, which would allow them to cover around 100 miles per day. Soon their gear from their sponsor arrived and was loaded, along with their camping gear. Last-minute details were handled, and they were on their way to Lebanon, Oregon, their starting point. It was cold the morning they began, all of them wearing jackets and long pants. The first few days were spent figuring out what worked and what didn't. There was no Google to hit up for answers, so they made it up as they went along. The Cascades were the first mountains they took on. The climb seemed like it would never end. They discovered Eastern Oregon wasn't green, it was a desert. Idaho was next. Jeff took a wrong turn and was later found with the help of a local sheriff. They made their way through the craters of the moon and then pushed on towards Wyoming. They were kicked off the road in Yellowstone National Park and had to drive to its eastern border. They could see the Rockies in the distance. How are we going to climb those, they wondered. The answer was as it would be the entire push: keep pushing. A day later, they stood at the 9,000-foot summit of Granite Pass. The ride down made the climb worthwhile. They saw the Great Plains stretched out before them. They were happy. In South Dakota, the roads were flat and smooth with little traffic. Camped on the banks of the Missouri River, watching a beautiful sunset and listening to tornado warnings on the car radio, looking at the map, they discovered that they were halfway there. People would sometimes stop them on the road to ask them what they were doing. Some had never seen a skateboard before. Most had never met a California hippie. The skaters weren't really hippies, they just looked like that. Most people that they met were nice. Some even invited them to stay in their homes. A few thought the boys to be foolhardy or just plain stupid for attempting to ride skateboards across America. But the folks in Hopkins, Minnesota were very welcoming, treating them to complimentary rooms and meals at the Hopkins House Hotel. There they were told they could make long-distance calls for free. This was a big deal in 1976. They called everybody they could think of, including Roller Sports, to let them know they were almost out of money. The company believed the team would finish, so they wired them $500. Reaching Kewaunee, Wisconsin, they took a ferry across Lake Michigan. They pushed ahead to Reed City, where they stayed with the Allen family in exchange for a lunchtime talk at the local Rotary Club. A couple of days later, they were in Ohio. They loved Ohio. Nicely paved flat roads and Amish farms. The skaters and the Amish stared at each other in wonder. Before they knew it, they were struggling with the Appalachians. they discovered that crossing them was more difficult than the Rockies. More ups and downs, false summits, and logging trucks. In West Virginia, while in a small cafe, an elderly local took one look at the damn hippie skateboarders, walked over to the jukebox, and punched up John Denver's Take Me Home Country Roads. Being outnumbered and far from home, the boys ate in silence. As Jack paid the tab, Mike walked over to the record machine, dropped in a dime, and chose Fool for the City by Foghat, then turned and smiled at the locals, and then said to Jeff and Jack, "We better get out of here, fast." Putting the Appalachians behind them, the team spent the night before the last day in Richmond, Virginia, then pushed a leisurely 42 miles to Williamsburg. They were greeted by local officials who presented them with keys to the city. Also present was the local media and Dana Hofke from Roller Sports, who handed the boys $500 each. Later that night, at a free fancy hotel, they laid out their $1,500 in 20s. None of them had ever seen that much money before. They thought they were rich. They knew they were done. Years later, they would come to understand that they did become rich that summer, not from their financial reward, that was soon gone, but from the experiences they shared during the first crossing of America by skateboard.